Welcome, everyone. My name is Caroline Hoy, and I'm with Boardable. We'd love to welcome you to our webinar with Sherry Quam-Taylor on raising revenue all month long. And after you hear Sherry's great information, why not head over to boardable.com and check out our whole platform dedicated to helping your organization do its best work ever by making meeting planning and communication more efficient and simple than ever. You can sign up for a free 90-day trial right now at boardable.com. No credit card, no commitment. You can try out our agenda builder, task tracking, online voting, e-signature, document storage, goal tracking, public meeting pages, and much more. So after the webinar, head over to boardable.com and sign up for a free trial. All right, with that, I would like to welcome our guest today, Sherry Quam-Taylor. Welcome, Sherry.
Hey, Caroline, how are you?
I am great, and I am so excited to hear how we can raise revenue all month long, and it's not all going to be asking for money.
It's not about all asking for money. Well, I'm really excited to be here with you guys right here in the middle of the week, or middle end, I guess. So let's. Could I start with a question today?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you. So, as a board member, and the board members on this call, what would you guess is the biggest contributor to raising more money? And so, is that, do you think, kind of mastering that ask, or some element of fundraising, or maybe it doesn't have anything to do, that's just tied directly to the ask? And I'm not really trying to start this, with a trick question, but I am really serious when I tell you that your nonprofit's growth has way more to do with your approach to and your comfort level with these couple things. Planning, your approach to annual planning, your approach to budgeting, your comfort level with investing in the organization, whether it's your time, your resources, and your energy. And that comfort level with spending that feels kind of scary, a lot of the time. And so the biggest thing on those elements, is how you're driving and tracking those on an annual, on a quarterly, and monthly basis at and between board meetings. So if you want to get everything, you want to do everything in your power where you're serving with your organization to generate revenue all month long, I want to start at a place where we can have a really honest conversation about two of the, I would call them, root challenges that I see a lot of organizations really struggling with. And so the first one, here's the first one. I am hopping right up on a little bit of my soapbox here to start this, Caroline, so I hope that's okay.
No, I love it. Okay. Nonprofits need to hear.
Okay, good. And I always tell people, I'm like, if you've been following me on LinkedIn during kind of some of this COVID time, you're going to know where I'm going with this. So first of all, overhead is not a bad word. It is absolutely not a bad word. One of the biggest misconceptions that we really struggle with is this concept that really your nonprofit should be expected to do more on less. And you need to be able to change lives. You need to be able to solve world problems. You need to be able to, continue serving in times of crisis. We're feeling that right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And change your model in times of crisis. I'm sure a lot of people have pivoted so much in the last few months. And frankly, just serve more in times of crisis, right? And that could not be, my goodness, of any time during the past, few months, nonprofits should not be expected to do more and less. I mean, haven't we seen that, right? So when we think of that, okay, so what does this kind of mean outside of COVID as well? And I'm talking about these phrases that we hear, and it might be something like, we've got to have this amazing gala. It's got to be the best in our community. We've got to raise tons of money, but can we get it for free? Can we get right? Can we get the drinks donated? Can we get the venue donated? Right? And so like those two things don't totally add up together, right? Or it might be, we want to send out this appeal and it's going to be great. And we need it to launch into this big campaign. Oh, but gosh, don't make it look too nice, right? Don't make the printing look too, too flashy, right?
Yes.
Right. And so these like that just doesn't add up, right? And then probably the maybe bigger one would be we really want to grow. We really, we have a waiting list for our programs and all that kind of stuff. So we need more money, right?
Mm.
But hold on, we don't want our program percentage to go down. Like, we can invest in learning how to, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars more because that would look bad on our 990, right? So that like those are like three examples I love giving in this do more on less, because that's really unfair as an organization when you guys are running amazing businesses that change lives, right? And so these misconceptions were true, obviously, before COVID-19 existed. But I got to tell you, it is time for them to end. And
Yeah.
so that is my passion through the end of 2020. And I have to tell you, I am seeing a lot of support in that, and hopefully people saying, you know what, you're right. Like we've been like, these are the people we have needed most during this time, and they deserve the support. So, and I'll tell you today, you've got to plan to invest time and spend money in all areas, in these core three areas of your nonprofit if it's going to grow. So obviously we know this. We know that's your programs, we know that's your admin and ops, and we know that's your fundraising. Here's the scoop. There are going to be years when you can't spend over 90% on your programs. Why? Because we need to grow. Like maybe in 2 years, you want to open a fourth site, and gosh, to do that, we would need to, do X, Y, and Z. And so this year we do have to put way more money into fundraising, because in 2 years, we're going to be investing double into program. So I bring this up, especially when I get to talk to leadership, people like yourself who are on this call, to say, it's okay. Do not buy into the fear of the percentages that I hear so often. I want you to know that if you need it, if you need to invest heavily in admin and fundraising in 1 year, because it really means you're going to make a greater impact down the road, I want you to own that. I want you to own that when you go into your meetings. Donors will understand it. And so
I love that.
Yes. I get so fired up about this, Caroline. So if you're not investing and you're not planning, here's why I said board, why is that planning and budgeting so important? I'm telling you, if you are not investing in all three areas, it really leaves you really vulnerable to a funding plateau. It's kind of, well, yeah, we're just kind of sitting at that $1 million mark. We kind of do every year, right? It also leaves you landlocked when opportunities come your way and you can't take advantage of them. It's like, oh, we'd love to do that, but we can't. We just don't have the funds, right? And we're seeing this right now. It's leaving you really at risk in times of crisis. And so organizations, as I'm seeing, where that panic meter is right now, it has so much to do with the funding model they had and planning model they had and budgeting model they had going into this time that is really, kind of an indicator as to where they are right now. So here's the truth. Investing in all of these areas helps you raise more money. Now, I say here charitable revenue because I oftentimes, many students right now have organizations who they might be a $5 million organization, but 4.9 of that might be government funding or program revenue. And they haven't invested in taking advantage of the fact that they're a 501c3 and learn how to move into that charitable revenue model. And it's also great for, organizations who are really purely a charitable giving model. You've got to invest in all of these areas to now move up into larger gifts for your organization. So here's a really quick case study I love sharing, mainly because I was involved with this organization when this happened. So here's a model that I want you to look at. And, if you're a larger organization, put a 1 in front of these numbers, right? You know where you are. This model and methodology really works for all size organizations I work with. So, here's a very standard organization, kind of every year, kind of bouncing up, down, just not really growing, I would say, not getting on that growth trajectory we want our organizations to be at. And so you can see from a program percentage in the 90s, and so old way would be rock stars. You guys are in the 90s on program, fantastic, right? But here's what started happening when we started investing into the infrastructure, the admin, the fundraising, right? Oh, 76% program. But what started happening? Whoa, this year's 70% program. Okay, hold on a second here. But now we're bringing in, almost $2.5 million, right? So there was this decision. There was this moment in time that said, something here is not quite right. Like we're just kind of bouncing up and down and, not ever being fully funded to the point where we can really, truly accomplish what we set out to do in the first place. So there was that decision to say, we're doing it different. We're going to invest in our work because it's worthy of investing in. And so you ask what changed, right? So from an expense side, we invested in overhead. That's what we're talking about. That allowed us to create a reserve as well. From an income side, we spent money learning on how to move up into larger gifts. How would we level up a lot of the relationships we have? And here's the thing, what I hear all the time is like, oh no, but this year we want to put as much into program as we can. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing, look at the program numbers, right?
Wow.
It's triple. And so I see this model over and over and over again. And I know it feels scary, right where that little star is. That's a scary moment. I was scared too. But it works. It works because we are growing businesses. So when I say overhead is, this myth or misconception, I want to throw out the window. This is what I'm talking about. So we need to think further ahead and further down the line to really put your organization on a trajectory of growth. This also works very similarly to a group who might be very heavily dependent on either government funding or foundation funding. Same thing. They might already be bringing in a few $1 million, but not taking advantage of that charitable bump. And so, I sometimes look at people and say, would you invest $10,000, $20,000 extra dollars this year to grow your charitable revenue? Ooh, that feels, whoa, that's, I don't know. Well, in this very simple model, it's like, well, it can teach you, was it worth it to have an additional $350,000, in this model that you would actually be able to invest back into your programs or your growth that would really set you up for a sustainable future. That's a pretty good ROI. I'm going to take that all day long. Here's the thing. This is a huge mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge in annual planning and budgeting. And it's decades of kind of brushing it off and saying, we are going to do this differently. And so I always say in your planning and budgeting, it's really this shift. And if you saw me right now, I'm kind of pivoting my body to say, we're going to move from, if we had the money, here's what we do. Yeah, I'd love to do that if we had the money, right? To here's what we need to accomplish our mission, and owning that, and then putting a plan in place for what we need. Okay, here's the second area I want to talk about. Your budget and your need are two different things.
Whoa.
So, yeah, no, one. I love this one. Okay, I said I loved the last one, but I really love this one too. So, I always ask a question when I have a kind of first call with everybody, and I'm letting you in that this is a little bit of a it's a little bit of a this one is a little bit of a trick question when I ask people, because I'll say, what's your financial need this year? What do you need to raise, right? And so I'm really not asking what is that squeak by number, right? So often I'll get, well, last year we brought in about 900,000, and so we'd love to get to $1 million. We'd love to do it, right? And so, but when I dig a little deeper and I ask questions, well, are you including this? Well, no. Are you including this? Well, we'd love to, but we aren't. I find that they're not really putting a plan in place to what the organization needs to function and to grow. And so 99%, I'm leaving 1% for a few people of the nonprofits I talk to are not fully funded because they aren't even raising to the right number in the first place. So here's the thing. This is how I would approach, or if you're a board member listening to this and kind of thinking about the budgeting process, you might have, I guess I'll say kind of two different budgets. You've got your budget. It's not, we're not stretching going crazy, but then that is usually not the number you're raising toward, right? We've got to put a plan in place to the number that you're raising toward. So I always ask during annual budgeting, like, what are these things that we've been afraid to put in the budget, but actually might be keeping us from growing, right? And so what are these expenses that actually, if we invested in them, would propel the organization forward, either from a programmatic standpoint, an admin, or fundraising standpoint? So I'll always say, in these three areas, in program, obviously, this is the easy one, right? Like we can dream about this very quickly. What needs to go in the budget so that our programs can grow? And from an admin standpoint, okay, so what are kind of those infrastructure things that I need to invest in to make sure my staff can sustain this growth? And then from a fundraising perspective, what do I need to spend? This is comfort level with spending. What do I need to spend money on that then helps me raise more money so that I actually can do the above? So if we are not, look at how all three of those add up together. So simple. Caroline, one time somebody said, what you teach is kind of practical, and I hope you're not offended I'm saying that to you. I was like, that is the best compliment you could give me because this just makes sense, right?
Yes,
and so
practical advice.
Yeah, practical. I'm all about it. So I would say, things like, what are you hesitating on putting in the budget that actually might be keeping you from growing, right? And so I just put a list here of things that I hear quite often that we're not planning for. Actually this week I said, where's your travel here? Like, where's your donor meetings? We don't really put them in. I just put it on my credit card. So in the budget, everything in the budget, right? And this could be, investing in maybe online technology to make your donor experience. Yeah, like Boardable. Yeah, like Boardable technology that makes, I was going to say your giving experience better, but yeah, if you're struggling with your board, it's like, oh, that's actually would be an amazing tool to have, right? Maybe it's, like oftentimes I'm working with executive directors who are trying to fundraise, but gosh, just don't have enough time. Okay, well, maybe we need to put an admin support in because your time is money. And we need to put that line in because if we were paying somebody X a year and that meant you raising 5 times more than that person's salary, like that's a no-brainer, right? And then the last little area on here, I wrote reserve fund. And gosh, what have we needed more or the most of in these last few months? Nonprofits have needed strong reserves. They've needed a cash balance to pull from to not only sustain their staff, but to also implement programs and implement every aspect of what they've been doing. So if I'm a strong believer in budgeting a reserve and getting you super strong, and then putting a plan in place to raise that, right? So it's only when you've actually created this, what I call it a needs-based budget, that expense side of your P&L. It is only when you've actually created a real and true need that you can then actually design a real fundraising plan that meets that goal. Right? So many budgets come to me. It's like, I'm using round numbers today, so I don't have to do math. We need $1 million, right? It's like, okay, well, the income side of your budget says 750. It's like, well, I know we got a lot to make up. Yep. Right. But you probably actually need to be raising to 1.1. So let's put a real plan in place. So you will never, if you're taking notes, write this down. You will never reach that next, a lot of people call it a stretch goal. You will never reach that need if you do not create a realistic budget. because then your fundraising plan doesn't work because you're never fundraising to the right number, right? And so if we think of, and we're moving here into fundraising, if we think of securing what I call investment level gifts, moving into those gifts where we're asking individuals for their best gift, we have to be able to share that need in these investment level conversations, right? We have to be able to explain, here's why we need 1.1. And so this is kind of a mindset plus knowledge plus need. And it's really that, if we had the money, we'd do it. Shifting to, here's what we need to accomplish the mission and all those amazing things I told you that we want to do this year. And so this is us moving from, we really hope we can reach 950 this year. We'd love it. And we'd be really great to, could I share with you what our $1.2 million need looks like? Can I share with you what that looks like? Right? So if you put zoom ahead and think of your development team or executive director at that solicitation table, does that donor, who is a successful business person, probably running a great business themselves, do they want to invest in someone who, we hope to, versus could I share with you what our need is?
Yes, it's like having your hat out, asking for help versus, investment plan.
You nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. So for context, I'm talking a lot about larger gifts here. So for context, what I do is I teach nonprofit leaders and boards really how to be less dependent on things like really heavy either government or program or event revenue, and teach them the actual activities that kind of help them start getting the train on the tracks to securing larger gifts from individuals. And I do that through my 90-day accelerator that I teach all over. I tell you that because it's interesting that, 30 days of it, I'm teaching you how to make the ask. Here are the tools you're going to use. Here are the questions, that you're going to be asked, or here's the answers to those scary questions you hope you're not asked. But the whole first 60 days is getting investment level ready and really getting all of these, I guess I'll call them strategic assets, to a point where you can sit down and have that investment level conversation. So I started at the top saying, would you believe me if I told you it's really less to do about the ask and more to do about how you as a board are planning and coming to the situation? And that's why I say this. It is so true. I see it all the time. So I wanted to put us in some really strong groundwork in that first kind of part of our talk today. But I do want to move into, some specific fundraising concepts and really talk about, or I guess give you some great takeaways so that hopefully you can start doing some of these things even this afternoon if you'd like to. So I really want to talk through 5 concepts here that I would say are ways to, or I guess things you should focus on between the meetings so that you can maximize your time as a board member. And that is, your time is valuable and you're volunteering your time. So I'm a big believer in, I want your time to be well spent, right? And so let's talk about ROI. Funding nonprofits is not easy. If anybody ever tells you, fundraising is easy, or this is a real easy solution, you need to pivot and walk away.
I don't think anyone's ever said that.
Okay, good. Once in a while I hear a few of these. I'm like, hold on. It's not that easy. So I always like starting it with some metrics here. And so if we look at the 1.5, 1.6 million nonprofits in America, 77% of them have never reached $1 million. That's a crazy statistic to me because I know some amazing organizations, a lot in that category. And then 91% have never reached $5 million. And so, when I talk about a funding plateau, this is really what I'm talking about. It is hard to scale and grow. And so I find that most nonprofits are actually spending way too much time on the types of things that actually yield low dollars or frankly attract small donors. And so they're like putting their time into those low ROI activities. And so if we think of, when we look at like our giving models and we say, small gifts really make up a very small percentage of your donation revenue every year. And so research tells us, is this make up 7% is what the average is. So on the flip side of that, though, and I love fundraising report card, 70% of nonprofit revenue comes from 0.7% of the donor base. That's a crazy stat. And so when we look at the data and we kind of lean into it, your nonprofit is going to grow, and you're going to really move into a model. It's got to be rooted in a model of ROI. And so when we look at how should we be funded, it's got to be tied to maximizing your time. Here's what I mean. So my approach always is that I want your top 30 donors yielding between 50 and 75% of your revenue.
Wow.
That's where I start. Now, are there, of course, little nuances to certain organizations? Sure. And so we'll talk about who those top 30 are. Here's the challenge, and here's where we're going to get to ROI. When we think about, as a board, as a team, as a staff, balancing what the time we're putting in and the money we're putting in, we have to ask ourselves, if most of our revenue, frankly, does come from this top part of the pyramid, we got to be careful. Where are we spending the majority of our time and energy and budget, right? And so often I see us default to the bottom part of the pyramid, and then we're always on the spin cycle. We're always feeling behind because we're not balancing our time and budget to where the revenue actually should and could come in. And so the truth I see, and a message I really want to send today when we're talking about ROI, is that, like, your time, people here on this call today, your time is the most valuable asset to the organization. And so every hour you spend fundraising has to be yielding the size gifts you can really feel in the bottom line, right? And so I love your guys' report, Caroline, that I just snapped a couple images of your 2019 board engagement survey, and you were asking about our board members fundraising, and I love that. And it's just, little over 15% are trying to make introductions and really open doors for people, and then over 28%. We have a few board members who do the majority of the work, and then it kind of goes down to, few actually do, or, yeah, they will if we ask them. So, this adds up, less than 50%, right? These top two. And so I bring that up because if half of the board is typically engaging, my goodness, that's even twice the reason that your time needs to be aligned to larger gifts, right? And so it's kind of I call it a math problem, I guess, that we really have to make sure that your time as a board member is aligned to the activities that are going to yield these largest gifts. And so this is hard sometimes. And back to our mindset and our misconceptions, this is not usually gathering foursomes for the golf outing, or auction items, or give me 10 names for the appeal. Those are not the activities we're talking about. I'm talking about deep relationship-based activities. And so
I see a question in our chat area about, is that what you would call a low ROI activity? Those kinds of little things like the golf outing or the...
Yeah. And please don't hear me say, oh, Sherry says not to do golf outings. I know right now we're all struggling with the golf outing and when we can do those again. There's a place for every kind of event. Where I'm seeing organizations struggle right now is if we were way too heavily dependent on those types of things. So in the context of your question specifically, oftentimes they are, right? Like I rarely have somebody come to me and say, I have this amazing golf outing and it makes the most amazing money. So what I usually hear is, oh my goodness, our golf outing, we put $50K into it and we make 100, so we kind of break 50. But gosh, I worked 3 months on it.
Mhm.
That's low ROI, right? And then if we ask the board to spend 3 months finding their foursomes and finding the auction items and, you know, if we ask them to put all their valuable time into those activities, I'll say, what would have happened if all those hours were spent on finding, cultivating large donors? You'd blow that golf event out of the water, right?
Absolutely.
So that's my example. Sometimes I was on a panel recently and they threw it to me and they're like, let's have Sherry talk about events because she doesn't like events. I said, hold on. I love a good event. Uh, I'm just saying, put them in their place.
Mhm.
And we've really seen these last few months um, where events have not helped us, right? We've been too heavily dependent on them. And so I want board members' time tied to those top 30 gifts. I'm going to elaborate a bit on that coming up here. So
Okay.
here's your takeaway in this first section I'm talking about. I want you as board members to really prioritize your time on the activities that lead to those top 30 donors. Because if they should really be yielding between 50 and 75% of your funding, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? That's where you have to be putting your money or your time and your money, right? Investing in it. So that's my first takeaway for the day. Hopefully there's been more, but that's my first official one. Okay, so here's this next concept. I always say quick fix. Quick fix is a lie. And so, I really, there's kind of a problem and there's a lot of, we're kind of on content overload these days, I think, but there's a lot of content and resources that will really tell you that like these kind of quick fix, oh, you just do this, or you just download this app, or oh, you just do this landing page. It's so easy, we raised tons of money, and that's really not the case. But I think sometimes, instead of focusing on the top part of that pyramid, we say, oh gosh, okay, cool, it worked. Seemed like it worked over there for them, so maybe that's true, right? Or we think this other group's having success with this one app, this one text to give, or whatever. And so let's try it, right? Here's the challenge. We all know that these types of more transactional, appeal-based, campaign-based activities are super time intensive, right? And the number one thing I hear from fundraisers is there's not enough time in the day. And the time you put in never outweighs the financial reward. They're very transactional in nature, right? And so oftentimes, even if you have successful appeals and events. And I want all of you to have successful appeals and events. At the end of the day, I often hear like, yeah, but we still need larger gifts, or it was great, but I don't have any like cash flexibility. I don't have any unrestricted donations. I don't know if anybody on this call hates asking for money, but I oftentimes hear like when we're in this cadence of these activities, oh, it kind of feels like I'm begging and I got to go ask my friends and family again. And that doesn't feel good. None of us want to feel salesy or, feel like that person that they're avoiding when you're walking up to their office or home. And at the end of the day, a lot of the transactional activities that we're focusing on in the bottom part of that pyramid, they don't allow us to fully fund our organization. They don't give us enough funding to focus on all three of those areas: your program, your ops admin, and your fundraising, right? And so it breaks my heart when I see organizations who can never really do what they set out to do in the first place because they are not fully funded. And so I'm going back to my pyramid here. In this top area, if I have my way, I want those dollars to be unrestricted, right? So
Mhm.
who are these donors? These are individuals. These are often also private family foundations or private businesses. And I pull those two groups into this because I call this the single source decision makers group. And so I want the majority of your funding coming from people who you have a relationship with, people who you can pick up the phone. Oh, let me give Chris a buzz. Great. People who you have direct access to. And so the strongest organizations right now are those that have direct access to their donors and had deep relationships with them and have really, they've really stood up and said, we're here to help. We are here to help. Now, the challenge is those three, or especially the top individuals, are oftentimes the scariest. It's like, well, you want me to do what? You want me to go, sit down and ask them what, or what does that look like, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So your between meeting takeaway here would be, I want you, if you're a board member, to make sure that you are really prioritizing those single source decision makers, right? Who can you introduce or who can you think about in your network who it's direct access. It's not a committee of 20 people we have to go through to get a yes or no. So that is a huge, I'll even tell you a little extra thing. I like to track that in my donor management software and run a report and say, how many of our donors at the top really are these single source decision makers? We can call them up and get a decision. That's a great little report to run.
Yeah. Talk about ROI, huh?
Talk about ROI. Okay, investment level leading. That's the word I want you to hear. So you already saw this. So I want to talk about this shift. Again, I'm shifting my body if you saw me from this reactive, well, we'll see how much money comes in, to this concept of proactively putting a plan to lead your donors to their best gifts. And so that really is us embracing that mindset that we started talking about today, from scarcity to need, from transactions to relationships, really prioritizing our time on relationships, and very specifically from casting that big net to those top 30 donors, right? And so, I say top 30, of course there's a pipeline that we're, pulling from and really working to get up into that top 30. But I you'll hear me say top 30 because that's really where our priority has to lie. Okay, so here's the thing. I want us to get clear on two main principles when we're talking about leading our donors. First one is, it is your goal as a board, as a team, every year to lead your donors to give their best gift and to then help them give that gift every year. And so this is a concept, like this is my core methodology. Imagine right now, if all your donors who were coming to your golf outing, to your event, whatever, if everyone was giving their best gift, that would be a game changer for your organization. So oftentimes when I'm working with people, they'll say, oh yeah, they give $5,000 every year. It's great. Is that their best gift? Oh no. I mean, they got 3 homes and they got this. And I know that I saw their name on somebody else's annual report and they're way up in this other category. Okay, well then we have work to do. How are we going to lead them to asking for that best gift? And then how do we lead them in a rhythm that helps them give that gift every year? So when we start thinking about how to lead donors to that ask, I always say there's 3 things that have to be completely clear in their mind before that really, I would say, gives us a way better shot on getting that best gift. And again, here we're going to go practical again, Caroline. It's your plans. Okay, so what are you doing this year? Oh, really cool, because next year we're going to do this, because in 5 years, we're going to do this, right? What are the plans of the organization? Whether this is your strategic plan or, whether it's in a giant binder on your back of your desk or if it's in your head, your donors have to know what your plans are. They've got to know what your programs are. I've got some real funny stories about donors really not understanding what my clients do. And so don't assume your donors know what you do, right? And then the third one is your need. We talked about this. So what is the financial need the organization has to actually accomplish that amazing plan you just talked about? And oh, cool. Yep. I see why you're the experts through these programs. So what's the financial need? And there's such a big disconnect because your donors do not understand your need. So do not assume they know the financial need. So if you're only talking plans, here's what we're going to do. It's going to be great. Here's how we do it. Okay, great. And I told an amazing story of this one changed life. I think we're going to get a big gift. I think they're going to write an amazing check. If they didn't understand what the financial need of the organization was, you're never going to get their best gift. So I would say to secure that best gift, we've got to put them on a path where we are leading them and really helping them say yes, right? And so I'm a big believer in creating great experience plans for our top 30 donors. A lot more than top 30, but we're focusing on top 30 today. So I bring this up because if you can kind of look at this path, I want to lead them to an ask. I want to lead them to the point where they're making really the best decision. And we hope it is a great decision to give to our organization. But I show you this path because oftentimes we're not taking the time to chart out how we're going to lead a donor from giving the $5,000 gift to the $10,000 gift. Oh, if they always give at Thanksgiving, we're not just going to wait to Thanksgiving, right? What are we doing in March? What are we doing in June? What are we doing in September? What are we doing in October so that we can ask them, if we can ask them, before Thanksgiving? And so I want you to hear this. You have way more control in leading your donors to an ask and leading them to their best gift than you think. But you will not if you do not plan out the steps to give that donor a great donor experience that is rooted in what they value, why they would even give, what they're passionate about, and that is not serving, and that it serves them, right, very deeply. And so this path is the key to getting your donors in an annual fund mentality. What I mean by that is you'll see this far right green circle that says, it's really thanking, right? Oh, here's the thank you. If that last circle is the key. My number one rule in thanking and responding to a donor is exceed expectations. If they say to me, you didn't have to do that, rock star, because I didn't, but I did. And so thanking and responding and showing a donor what you did with their gift gets them back in the queue. I'll say things like, I love reporting back to people on the impact of their gift. So I'll be circling back with you in 90 days. So that gets them back in this path. So I want to show you board this path because this is the path. If you have, 3 hours a week to be working on things between board meetings, I want you to be, maybe you have 3 donors. Maybe each one of your board members have 3 donors that you're working with this experience plan, working alongside your staff. You're probably not the one doing the ask, and so your time is way better spent on creating and leading these great donor experiences than any sort of event or any sort of transactional activity. Because typically for our top 30 donors, the ask is not the event. It's a step that's more over here, step number 2 or 3. It's just a step on the donor's experience. So I told you, I think the title of this is it doesn't, you can raise more money and it doesn't mean asking. I always tell boards, you actually get to do the fun part, right? You're the one who gets to follow up and make sure, and maybe share with them what their gift did, walk them through the facility that you have, take them to dinner and have a student along who's been greatly impacted by the work and by their generosity. You rarely are the one doing the ask. And so in this section, I want to say your takeaway really would be, you need to be focusing on, I guess I'm calling it those strategic chess moves toward the ask. And so those are the activities that will lead to these larger gifts we're talking about. Now, I'm going to say something here, and sometimes I say this in board meetings when I'm doing some training. I also want your executive director designing a wonderful donor experience for you.
Ooh.
And so I want them serving you. I want them soliciting you. I want them to show you how it's done. And so sometimes I'll say in board meetings, I've FYI, I've told these guys they need to be creating a donor experience for you, soliciting you. Please embrace it because I want you to learn that it actually feels really great, right? And so oftentimes I think, when we say, "Oh, my board says they don't have it, they don't have access to anybody with money," or they don't know anybody. Sometimes I think that's rooted a little bit in, well, what would you say to my neighbor if I introduced you to them? Like, what are you going to do with them? Like, you're not just going to ask them for money, are you? No, we're not, right? It's actually going to be a wonderfully designed experience. And so sometimes the best way to show a board member how that's done is to model it. So I would say accept that, embrace that. Okay, so I want to move into this fourth topic that I call don't settle, right? And so I hear this quote often. I'm kind of joking. I'm saying, well, most executive directors who are in my program, I might be being a little sarcastic there, but I hear a lot of, well, my board doesn't know. No, but they don't know people who can write big checks. They just don't know them. And so here's the thing. And this is a concept that I teach pre-COVID and I'll teach post-COVID. And it's relevant in even, our businesses too. I see so much money left on the table when we are deciding what a donor's best gift is. When you say, well, let's just ask them for $5,000. There's no way, well, at least they gave 5,000. I don't know what they can do. So let's just ask them for 5,000, right? I don't think they can give 20. So let's just back it down to 10. Here's the thing. The next time you're tempted to make a decision about, what size gift your donor can give, you have to look what's behind that. I'm pretty sure you haven't seen their bank records, right? I mean, and so you got to really make sure you are not deciding what somebody can give, because we have to offer them and invite them to participate in the mission, right? You have a need. And so when I see groups, I guess I would say when they're not committing to sharing the financial need of the organization, it often is a symptom of maybe a bigger problem. So, this could be, and this is a board member or a staff member, really, it could really mean that you're not super confident in sharing or in asking for what you need, or you're, like, I've never done this before. It feels awkward. Am I doing it right? Right. It can mean that maybe your organization is a little desperate and you have so few larger gifts that, like, oh my gosh, we just got to get it. Don't make them mad and ask for 10, just ask for 5. We've got to get it, right? It can also mean that you're really uncomfortable with asking. And sadly, that leads to underselling your mission, for far less than its impact. And your missions are worthy of being invested in, right? And so I would say in between meetings, release the pressure of finding major donors, right? You just get to network and share the need and share the passion you have. And that is contagious. And then I would tell you to stop making financial decisions for your network. Let them decide if they want to participate. You get to share why you are giving, why you are passionate about the organization. And this last topic I want to just talk about is learning is not a risky investment, right? We all have to be lifelong learners. And so when I do see teams struggling to grow or organizations funding plateau, it usually has to do with these couple things. We've talked about organizations not planning to their budgeted need or budgeting to their need, right? Oftentimes there's just simply not a plan. Like, how would I grow into these larger gifts? How do I start? I don't know what I don't know, right? And the board, I often find, obviously, despite great professional success, entrepreneurs themselves and leaders in the community, oftentimes they've never had experience. Maybe you're on this call and you're like, I don't know, I've never been trained how to ask for money, and so it feels scary. And then that leaves the fundraisers feeling all alone, out kind of on a limb. And lastly, the ED and oftentimes the development director as well, they've never had formal fundraising training because, they are experts. They're mission experts, program experts, doctors, lawyers, pastors, teachers, social workers who are running the organizations, but they've never needed to know how to ask for large gifts up to this point. And so that feels a little uncomfortable, and I'm not totally sure how to do that. So I'll always say to people, just because your ED or DD is amazing at growing the programs, or DD amazing at events or that sort of thing, they may actually struggle with leading large donors through these investment level conversations if they've never done it before, right? And so when I hear from an executive director, I hate fundraising, I don't like asking for money, my board doesn't know they're supposed to fundraise, typically it's more rooted in this process. Like, this is a mystery. I don't know. I don't think I'm doing it right. I don't know what to say. And because I don't know what to say, I don't know how to manage up and help my board do this. Like, I don't know how to lead my board to the most important activities. And so you have to invest in your staff, ED, DD, learning the activities, that can fully fund the organization every year. They have to learn that. You have to invest in helping them learn how to align their time with these types of things we talked about today, and help them learn how to max your participation, right, with that greatest ROI. And so the best investment you can do is really equip your leadership staff to help you as a board find and secure these top level gifts. And so in between meetings, what I would say, it's kind of a weird one, I guess, but I would say listen where and when the ED or the fundraising team is asking for help, right? They may need help learning some of these things. And that's hard for them to ask, because sometimes I hear like, well, I was hired to do this. I mean, I can't ask for that. I'm supposed to know how to do this. Very few people have had true mid or major level gift cultivation training when it comes to individuals. So here's the truth. I'm going to land here and we're going to roll into questions. Every nonprofit, and here's the good news, I should say, the good news and the truth, you can be fully funded when you learn how to align your time with this ROI model I'm talking about. And we learn how to secure investment level gifts really hand in hand with the organization staff. I'm going to take just a breath. How are you feeling? I'll let you kind of fill in your questions here. If I really hope there's been some takeaways that maybe you can even share with your team and start moving forward. If you feel like you want to talk to me, I'm going to try to answer as many questions as we can here. There's two things I just want to point out really quick. I do free major gifts audits. Oftentimes it's just good to talk. And so they're free. You can hop on my calendar there at quamtaylor.com/ready, as in ready to move into larger gifts. And we'll just chat a little bit, and I'll give you some takeaways that you can use, and we'll try to find some places where you might be leaving money on the table. And then I did allude to my 90-day fundraising accelerator. I teach this virtually all over the country. So I've been very thankful that I teach virtually these last few months. And so you can check that out if you want it, quamtaylor.com/let's grow.
Beautiful. Yes. So just a couple quick reminders. We will be sending you a replay. Sherry, lots of people asking, where can I get the slide deck to share with my board? So
good.
Don't worry, everybody. We're going to send you a PDF of the slide deck and a replay of this entire webinar tomorrow in your email. So keep an eye out for that, and please do share it with anyone you think it would help. And then I also wanted to tell you about our webinar next month, if you'd like to join us, for Nonprofit Committee Magic, how to improve your board structure. So we're going to talk about how to get those committees talking to each other, how they can support the board, who should be on what committees, all this good stuff. We have a link to that on our homepage at boardable.com, and you'll also see it in our social media, our newsletter, etc. So please join us for that next month. And now let's get to some of those questions.
Awesome.
Okay. I'm going to
Do you
start
have
out.
some favorites? Okay, good.
Yeah, let's see. I saw earlier on, Piper was asking about, you mentioned running a report in your donor management software. Was that the top 30? Is that what we were running the report for? I'm trying to remember what you were referencing then.
I totally remember. So what I mentioned was having a way to click, or track your single source decision makers. So, obviously a database is only as good as obviously the data we're putting in, but also how we're segmenting it, right? And so when I am trying to look at who's giving or how I'm trying to really track my growth metrics, especially with my top level donors, I would go through and create some sort of defined field, depending on what software you're on, and track which ones are single source decision makers and which ones are, I guess I'll call multifaceted decision makers, so that you can run those sorts of things. If you were in a bind and you needed to say, hey, gosh, we have some unexpected expenses, or gosh, I gotta try to move. Gosh, we have so many solicitations in September, but we're having a really slow summer. It's that report of single source decision makers I would run because I have direct access to those people. So it could be as simple as you creating a field that is maybe not a single source decision maker. Those are foundations, corporations, that sort of thing. So you can pull those out when you're running reports. It really just helps you be more targeted.
Mm-hmm. I love that. We also had a couple questions specific to the pandemic.
Yep.
Okay. So first of all, you were talking about that wonderfully designed donor experience. Do you have any suggestions for how we can do that right now?
I do. So this has a lot to do with what you were doing before the pandemic, of course. I mean, if you're a natural relationship builder and you've got deep, relationships with your top level donors, my advice to people has always been stay the course, right? We're going to be really sensitive, but we're going to stay the course. We're going to stay in contact. We want to keep updating them on what their gift is doing right now. Now, that's for people who were kind of in this rhythm, before we started, or we kind of landed in this position right now. If you're like, oh my goodness, we've not really done this. We've been heavily dependent on something else. I will always tell people, maybe just run a report of, okay, who are the top 10 people who gave, let's just say between November and mid-March or beginning of March. And I would say, okay, great. Those were some nice gifts that we got. An easy engagement or kind of step on that donor's experience might be just reaching out and say, hey, I'm just having Friday morning Zoom calls with people who were very generous to us here in the last 6 months. And I'm not asking you for a thing, but I wanted to share with you what your gift is doing right now. We've been able to pivot our after school tutoring program to an online version, and we're having just as much success. And I just wanted to share a couple nuggets with you, and just to really share with you what your gift is doing. That's a way to get them on the track, right? Like, you're not asking, especially if they just gave. You may have people give as a result of that. I have some clients who are doing that, and the donor is saying, well, what do you need? Do you need something else right now? Well, funny you ask, right?
Mm.
So get them into a rhythm of getting updates from you. So my rule of thumb, and this obviously depends on the donor, is that I want you having a deep level engagement with your top 30 donors, like sometimes 4 times a year. And those are all not asks, right? One of them certainly is, or 2 if that's how a donor operates. But we have to find ways to communicate with them that are deeply rooted in in what they value. So I always tell people to start with the people who gave most recently and just say, I just want to tell you what your gift is doing. And it is a call of thankfulness. It is a call of assuring that donor they made a great investment because it has allowed you to do X, Y, and Z during this time. That is killer right now, because if you can speak from a point of assurance, many organizations who have strong reserves right now can speak to their donors from a point of assurance. So if you can, don't default right into crisis mode. Stay in that, here's what your gift is doing right now.
Great. I love that. All these ways that we can continue that conversation without asking all the
Yes,
time.
so important, so important.
All right. And then the other question related to the pandemic is, someone was saying that they find their ED is more afraid to ask for money right now. Or I'm sorry, Mary says, my board president is more uncomfortable asking for money during the pandemic. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really think, Caroline, that goes back to the person who's worried actually doesn't have to feel the fear that people aren't going to give, right? And it's probably that person's own, I'll say issues with money, but you know what I mean? It's like their own perceptions of, that would be offensive right now, or, that would be salesy. That's probably their own issue with money. Your job is, you still have the need. You're still running an amazing mission. You're still running an organization worthy of being supported, COVID or not. And so you don't get to decide if people can or cannot give to you. It's your job to share the need. It's your job to be consistent. So I'm going to be a little strong here and say I would disagree with that person. And I those are the types of things that really hold an organization back, because I'm going to be really honest with you. A lot of my clients are getting the largest gifts of their career right now, like mind-blowing gifts. I had a client move a $10,000 gift to a $250,000 gift.
Wow.
I know. I was like, could you write that down for me, please? She shared the need. Right? And so
talk about not defining what a donor can give for them.
Exactly. And she had no idea of their capacity. She was a little like, what? But she never backed down. The default would have been, well, they've given 10, so maybe we should ask them for 15. Talk about leaving money on the table, right?
Yeah. Wow. That's a great example. Here's another one. This one we could probably do a whole webinar on by itself.
Next time.
Natalie asks, how often can you ask those big 30 donors for funds?
Good question.
Before it gets approved?
What's appropriate for it gets approved? Sorry, I cut you off, Caroline. Okay, so it depends on the donor, right? So I want us leading them to an annual gift, right? And so that has a lot to do with your cadence and how you're leading them. Now, sometimes there's these donors who like to give 3 times a year, right? I still want you sitting down with them and using tools and, to raise their need and really kind of getting having an open discussion about their gift for the year. It's up to them if they give it in 3 chunks or 2 chunks or 1. But I want you at a minimum soliciting them annually, at a minimum. And we're going to customize it based on if that donor says, yeah, come to me right after the first of the year because I've kind of got my bonus and I've got it settled down. But then I also get a bonus at the end of the summer. So you can come to me then too. Be okay having a conversation like that with them. It's okay. They want it to be a win-win. So lean into those money conversations that sometimes we avoid. And so what's appropriate? You'll know. It's not going to be rude. Sometimes don't worry you're being rude. If you're building a relationship and you're being human and you're having a great interaction and you're serving them, it's not rude, right? That's kind of a mindset thing. You're not rude.
That is good to know. I know that's tricky one to kind of wrap your head around at first.
It is. It is.
Okay, let's see. We talked about the wonderfully designed experience for donors during the pandemic. Someone previously asked about how do we approach donors during the pandemic. We've touched on that. It's all about, sharing that need you were talking about.
Yeah. And I'll just say one sentence on that. Now, I understand if you weren't doing these types of activities and then like making a first call right now, it does feel a little ambulance chasing. Like I understand that. But that's why if you weren't doing that, you have to start small and you're not soliciting. What you're doing is you're planting the seeds to solicit in 6 months, 12 months, in a year. So if you aren't doing it, or if you haven't been doing it, put your head in seed planting mode, because you're not asking. That's way down the line. I wish it would have started earlier, but you got to start now. You got to start now. So just start having a relationship with people.
I love that. And I think in some ways people have a little bit more time for those kinds of conversations right now.
You're so right. It's they don't have too many excuses for why they can't have the call,
Yeah.
stuck in their house.
What's their excuse? They're
Right.
definitely not out.
Not on vacation. Yeah.
Exactly. We got them right where we want them, Sherry.
Yeah, totally. That's a good way to look at it.
Okay, here's another one that could be a whole webinar in and of itself. Will says, I'm in the beginning phase of a new nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
How do I start my fundraising in this environment? Maybe if you could do you have some resources on your site or something that might be a good place to start? I'm not sure you can really.
Yeah, I have a lot of playbooks on my site that you could reach out to. Here's the thing. I would even tell you, Will, it starts with, as small as you are, even with a startup, it starts with you from day one creating a realistic budget. This is not saying day one you have a $2 million budget, but start raising to a higher number than you think. Like right now, what you're thinking is probably not maybe the full budget, because you even like just thinking of your fundraising exercises. I would say start with higher versus lower, right? Start with those stakeholder conversations. I would spend my hours on more of these larger strategic conversations, way more than like the Facebook appeals and that kind of stuff that we think we should do. Even when you're small, this ROI approach is crucial.
That's really good mindset to have going in, as you said. Okay, Natalie has a great question here. What's your feeling on spending hard-earned fundraising money on giveaways like tchotchkes or marketing pieces, things like that? Is that part of that donor experience or?
Yeah, I don't love it. I don't love it. Here's why. Your mission is worthy of people giving gifts to. I'm going to use donations in this answer. Giving money to, without getting something in return. It cheapens your mission. It's like, it's not a give-get, right? They are giving to you because your mission is awesome and you are changing lives and you are changing the world, right? You do not have to give people something in return. And so this is where we've seen events go wrong, right? When it's too many silly games and too many auctions and a speaker that has nothing to do with your mission, but they're a great singer. It's like, it's got to be tied to your mission. So I don't love it, to be honest with you. Are there times when it's appropriate? Yeah, or it maybe kind of adds to it. But I usually see it skewed a little too far on the wrong side.
Interesting. Yeah, I saw a comment here from Crystal, same thing. She watched a webinar that emphasized thank you gifts like reusable bags and things with your logo on them. So conflicting advice here.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if someone gave you $25,000 and what does that person value? Their gift was used well. It was a good investment. That the mission was pushed ahead of whatever they were passionate for. They can get a free bag down the road, right?
Mhm.
So, and that's not, a bag is not going to retain a donor. You know, we've come back and we actually made you a quick video to share with you what your gift is doing, and a custom letter from a student whose life was deeply impacted. That's what's going to get a repeat donor, you know, not a gift. Maybe for a smaller donor, yeah, that's fine. Maybe you can do something interesting for your monthly donors. Great, love that. That's kind of fun, right? It's more brand awareness and that kind of thing, not your investment level donors.
That makes sense. I'm thinking of my NPR mug downstairs.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yes. Okay. Do we have any more questions here? I know this
Good
is a
questions today.
topic, and probably going to have a lot more once you take this to your board and get everyone's feedback on that.
Yeah, and just let me know if anybody has further questions. Just reach out or hop on my calendar on that kind of that audit link, and I'm happy to answer any questions during this time.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And again, we will be sending you a replay and this wonderful slide deck with all of Sherry's great information tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that. And in the meantime, visit boardable.com and Sherry's site to get more great information to help you with your mission. Thanks so much, Sherry.
Thank you. Good luck to everybody.
All right. We'll see you next month.